Good morning. Our morning devotional is a continuation of the study of the 7 Next Words of Christ by Shane Stanford. We're on the 4th word. He reveals these, comes from Luke 24 and also John 20. Luke 24 deals with Jesus coming in contact with the disciples during the resurrection. And hear these words now from Luke. While they were saying these things, Jesus himself stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." They were terrified and afraid. They thought they were seeing a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you startled? Why are doubts arising in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. It's really me. Touch me and see, for a ghost doesn't have flesh and bones like you see I have." As he said this, he showed them his hands and feet. Because they were wondering and questioning in the midst of their happiness, he said to them, "Do you have anything to eat?" They gave him a piece of baked fish. Taking it, he ate it in front of them. Shane shares with us a story of three people who came in contact with a desire and an ability to communicate with God and to hear God's voice. The first story is from Kerry. He's a young man in his 20s. This was in January of 1999. Things had caved in around him, and he found himself in a desperate situation. So he drove his car onto some train tracks and put the car in park. And he was going to wait for the train to end his life. And while there, he listened and he strained for wondering what will happen. The train conductor saw what was going on. The engineer blew the horn and was shouting out loud to himself, "What is going on? Why won't this car move?" And so he blasted again. And suddenly, almost miraculously, the car moved off the tracks. And moments later, the train passed that very spot. And the police arrested the driver and charged him with reckless endangerment. They asked him what was going on. He said, "Well, I was ready to end my life, but I clearly heard God's voice. And God told me, your life is not over. Don't finish it this way." Later, he would be found guilty, and he went willingly to a center to help with his depression. Another story is a young girl named Emily. She's a 4-year-old who was out in the yard helping her mom and dad with some yard work. And the dad noticed that she was looking at a beautiful blossom, a bloom from a gardenia bush. And she was so in awe of that one single bloom. And she turned to her dad and said, "Dad, I want to give this flower, this bloom to God." And his dad thought for a minute. He said, why don't you just say that in a prayer to God? And sure enough, he looked at her and she looked up to the sky and with her hands. And after moments of silence, she said, "Thank you. Thank you for taking this gift." Her dad knew that this moment became a holy moment for her and for him. Shane goes on to say there are really 3 types of people in this world: those who hear God through squealing train brakes, and those who hear God in the flower garden. And then there's the third, who refuse to hear God at all. Shane goes on to share the story of another one, Catherine. Remember Shane's medical history. When he was 16, he went in for a implant for his eye, transplant. And Catherine was there too. She was 16 as well. And she prayed with him before his surgery. And he was just in awe. Her bright blue eyes and her radiant smile. It was after his surgery he was asked to walk around the ward, and it was then he was able to sit and visit with her some more. He found out that she had an operable brain tumor, and she had been there a lot of her young life. But the medical staff had taken her in as part of their own family. He was amazed at her peace, amazed at her countenance, amazed at all that she faced and talked about with such maturity and deep faith. He knew that he wanted a faith like Catherine's faith. You see, Shane sees the nature of God's peace nothing to do with relinquishing world's difficulties. It's living in our difficulties with God, to see that God is right there with us with nail-scarred hands, that God is with us through it all. And may we see that in the days that we face. May God's peace be with you.